Welcome and thank you for all of you for joining us today. We are delighted to be bringing this event to you from the Chamber's Public Policy and Education and Workforce Committees. I'm Suzanne Williamson and I serve as one of the tri-chairs on the Education and Workforce Committee, and we are looking forward to an interesting and informative dialogue about the start of the school year. I just want to give you a few housekeeping rules real quick. First, this event is being recorded and can be played back later. So with that, feel free to turn off your video if you would like. Basically, it will be just Bill and Dr. Stone. Also, we will be having some time for questions at the end from our audience. However, all of your mics are muted, so if you could put those questions you have into the chat feature, we will certainly save time to discuss those at the end. Thank you. Now let me give you a little bit about our two speakers for today. Our moderator is Bill Sproul. He serves as the president and CEO of the Richardson Chamber and has brought a wealth of growth and development to the Richardson during his tenure. Additionally, he presides over Tech Titans and the Richardson Economic and Development Council. He's a longtime Richardson resident, proud graduate of Baylor University, and a huge Kansas City Chief fan. Also joining us is Dr. Jeannie Stone, Superintendent of Schools for Richardson Independent School District. Dr. Stone hails from Garland and began her teaching career as a middle school teacher in Dallas and Mesquite. While principal at Poteet High School, the campus was named National Blue Ribbon School. Dr. Stone was an administrator in Wiley ISD and joined RISD in 2015 as the Deputy Superintendent and moved into the top spot in 2017. Dr. Stone graduated from UT Arlington, Texas A&M Commerce, and Nova Southern University. She's a huge fan of kids. And with that, I will turn it over to Bill.
Thanks, Suzanne. Appreciate all your leadership and your help. And thanks to all the leaders of our public policy and education and workforce committees for helping put this together. Jeannie, I see a lot of familiar faces out there on the screen, including my chair, Stan Bradshaw. Stan, we appreciate you being there today. And some of my past chairs like Amanda Rocco with UT Dallas, joined us, and just so many others. So it looks like a good, friendly crowd, and which probably, given the experience during COVID of being in one of the most difficult public, service positions, being a superintendent, I'm just sure that, you get all sorts of interesting comments from the public, both good and not so good. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But I do want to just start by saying how much I appreciate you and your leadership. I know this is a tough time for any superintendent. I can't imagine what it's like day to day, just kind of feeling whipsawed. And maybe you can actually just start by just saying, what does a day in the life of Jeannie Stone look like during the pandemic?
Well, they're not always this great, but today was a great day because I try to set Friday mornings, if I can, aside. I try not to book anything and be out at schools or be talking with board members, which I know, thank you to a lot of our RSD board members that are on this Zoom today. But today was a great day because I was at Northwood Hills and I was out with kids and visiting classrooms, and so that was great. I then did a dance party with Big Springs Elementary. They had a dance party for their kids, so that was great. So my bucket is full, and so if I'm a little bit like giddy on this call, this is how I do it. But that's not a normal day. A normal day is really a lot. We're getting a lot of input now, which is great. And lots of communication, two-way, more so than ever before. It's not always positive. It really is, when you're creating something new for the very first time, and you have to think about this. We're standing up school in a time of a pandemic with all of the things that we're doing with sharing virtual and in-person platforms. So really we're creating this as we're going, So a lot of people have a lot of opinions about how things should be done, and they don't always agree with the choice that we make for 39,000 students because it may not be what they feel is the best for their, one or two. And so, that's challenging. It really is, because I want to serve the community, and I want to really do the best to make decisions that everyone will accept and support. And but it's not going to be that way. And I had to accept that early on, even as early as last March when we first decided to close school as we did. And so, that is kind of like the analogy of turn right, no, turn left, no, turn right. You should have turned left. So, but everybody knows I'm trying to drive this car the very best I can and make decisions for our students and staff, and have lots and lots of support out there. And that's what I look to whenever things can get challenging.
So let's get to the question of, give us the update on what is the status of in-person and online learning in RISD?
Yeah, so as everybody knows, probably a lot know, but you may not realize exactly how or why we decided to make this decision. And we made a decision that was kind of unlike what, I'm not sure that I've seen any other districts that have done this, but it was a lot of thought that went into this. So, of course, you know that all of our school district is in Dallas County. And so we had to make a decision, even though right now, when we made the decision it's about a month ago, Dallas County was in the red. And the health officials were advising that we did not go back to face-to-face school, but our parents really wanted us to go back to face-to-face school and needed us to go back to face-to-face school. And because Richardson ISD is in the farthest north of Dallas County, we were able to look at the local context of our data and make what we feel is a really good decision. We made that in consultation with a lot of health officials, and one of them is Dr. Bonnet, who is the health official for Richardson, the city of Richardson. So I'm so grateful for him that we were able to make that decision. So we did a staggered start. So we started school in total virtual on August 19th, and we stayed in that state for 3 weeks. And then we made the decision that we were ready to go back on September 8th with just our elementary schools. And that allowed I think that's one of the best decisions that we made, because it allowed us to put all of the support on our elementary campuses for a full week. Before we opened up our junior highs the following Monday on September 14th, we put all of our resources there to make sure that it was a smooth start. And then the following week, we brought back our in-person for high schools and put all of our resources there. I would have done that if I would not have changed that decision. It was really one of the best decisions, although it was somewhat hard for some of our families who wanted us to send everybody back all at the same time. Right now, we have about 20,500 students who are in face-to-face, and that's about 55%. And we have about 18,000 in virtual, so that's about 45%. And so we will stay in that with all of those offerings that way until the end of the 9 weeks, which comes up in a couple of weeks. And then families will have the option to choose if they want to either switch either way. And so, yeah, we've had now 4 great first days of school, and tons of support from just everybody, all hands on deck. And it's really going really well, as can be expected. Ideally, we want every single one of our students in face-to-face school. We know that that is the best way to get the outcomes that we need and want for our students. But with virtual being a choice, we're going to have that as a choice all year long. We're supporting those families as well.
So God forbid a COVID outbreak occurs at one of the schools. What's the protocol?
Yeah, and there are a lot of protocols, and we have a portal that's set up right now. You can go to risd.org and /COVID-19, or just land off of it from our website. But you can go and you can actually see cases that are right now in schools, or we have and there actually is a total number of cases that we've had so far. So because we opened up school, within the first day of opening up school, we had a case come into the school because it was someone that had tested but didn't get their results, and so they were actually at school. So we're having to react to that with a lot of different quarantining, because if someone is in close prolonged contact with someone that has tested positive, then they have to be quarantined for 14 days. So you can imagine that if someone comes to school with the virus, then we have to contact trace. And we have a great system where we, every day when somebody goes into a building, they check in. They are, and if they go and move around somewhere else in the district, they check out of where they are, they check in, and that allows us to contact trace. And we are trying to keep down the quarantining as low as possible. But we have quite a few students and staff members right now that are in quarantine. And then we have some active cases as well at some of our schools.
Are students and teachers required to get their temperature taken when they enter a school building?
No, and that is one of the CDC guidelines that we follow. It was not recommended that for students that we take their temperature every day. Staff members and visitors take their staff temperatures every day and report that on our screener. We have a screener though that parents, they complete at home for us, and they turn that in once a week to the campuses. And so far, you know, we've had great trust with our parents going back and forth both ways. And what we promised to our parents was, we will keep you informed. Please keep us informed. Keep your students home if they're exhibiting any signs or symptoms. And, you know, so far, knock on some wood, that's the sound you hear. We are really keeping the virus out of our schools, except for 1 and 2 cases. And we have not had what I would in any way say is a spread. And we don't want that. And so that's why I keep urging and just urging, wear masks inside and outside of schools. So anyone who's going to be coming into our schools, please then wear a mask and social distance when you're outside of our schools.
So the students are required to wear a mask when they're in the schools?
So we have a universal mask requirement, and we actually take that down for every grade, even pre-K. You know, the governor's order requires that a mask be worn if you are over the age of 10, but because we've already seen many cases in our community for young people that are under the age of 10, although their symptoms may be minor, they can still be what's classified as spreaders. And so we have a universal mask requirement, and our kids are doing really well with that. I mean, you know, we were so surprised at how seamless that went, but that really helps our teachers and our staff members and really families who are sending their kids to school who are still fearful. That's just, that protection is a non-negotiable. But then we also have a lot of other things. We have desk shields around every desk. The kids get them in the morning. They carry them around with them. They set them up whenever they're in music, wherever they're in the cafeteria. And, you know, and that's one of those things that I know I hear a lot from parents that think that we're overreacting or we're doing too much. And what I have to say is that we are taking every precaution, and that one desk shield is something that is making many parents and definitely our staff members feel comfortable about being face to face. And so we won't be removing that until we feel that it is safe to do so.
You and I were on the Dallas Chambers session last week, and the Commissioner of Education, Mike Morath, was on there. You heard him say that, you know, he feels like he's gotten a medical degree, you know, during COVID. What resources did you rely upon to build your protocols and your plan? I heard you say CDC, but I'm sure that you had others. You mentioned Dr. Bonnet, but who were in general were the groups that you relied upon to build not just your protocols, but your online learning, you know, strategies, et cetera?
Yeah. This has been the most collaborative time of our lives, I think, as educators. And I think that's really great, because whenever, you know, we were trying to stand up and write our blueprint, which is over a 50-page document that details every single thing that will be done in this new environment, we consulted with almost daily with Dallas County Health Department, CDC. We have a contact that we make contact with, if not daily, several times weekly. Texas Education Agency and Commissioner Morath was on daily calls with superintendents for months. Now we are I'm on 3 calls a week with him, just because I'm in several different groups that he consults with, but he still is on a call with us every week. And they have just been so supportive, and I have to give a shout out to our agency. A lot of collaboration with peer districts. You mentioned Plano. Sarah Bonser and I are good friends. We talk almost every day. Garland, Rick Lopez, tons of collaboration. Anytime there's a question about anything, we're on a call collaborating. And so that was the result, all of that, as well as parents. You know, we convene parent groups, we convene teacher groups, and even some student groups of some of our kids to talk to them about our protocols before we put anything in terms of a permanent thing in our blueprint. And so, yeah, this has been the most collaborative time, and I hope we carry a lot of that forward.
Well, speaking about carrying forward, I know in the business community, there are some habits that occurred during the pandemic that are not going to change. That, you know, even whenever we get to the new normal, whenever we get a vaccine, we're just not going back to the old ways of doing things. What is that going to look like for RISD? What will you carry forward that you didn't do, you know, before the pandemic?
Well, first, in sort of, you know, an anecdotal one, I'll say, is that I think that the appreciation and perception of public education has been raised to a height I've never seen in my lifetime or my 31-year career. So I appreciate the fact that people are more aware of what teachers do every day. And I hope that carries forward. The tough jobs that teachers have, and the tough jobs and just the great things that public education provides to kids, I think is a new awareness for everyone. The power of technology definitely has been, you know, a game changer. Of course, thanks to our school board, we were 1-to-1 several years ago. So when the pandemic struck, we were not challenged with how we were going to have, you know, the kids to have computers, because everyone had them, either computers or iPads. So that's been a huge game changer for a lot of kids as well, to have a new level of access that they've never had. We were able to stand up hotspots in our homes. Whenever we first started this, we realized that just giving someone a computer wasn't enough. They have to have internet and broadband access. And so that's been something that we are consistently working on and even trying to improve in terms of increasing our broadband. And then again, as I mentioned before, I think how important it is to maintain trust and communication. The very first meeting I had with our principals back in March is you cannot over communicate. Over communication needs to be your #1 strategy. And so that has been something that I hope that we will carry forward in terms of the trust and transparency that we've built with the community, and then the ongoing communication that really is 2 ways. We really, in a week, we stood up right when we went into being shuttered last March. We stood up a new program called Let's Talk, where at any given time, anyone can log on, click on, submit a question. It goes to the right person, and their question is going to be answered within 24 hours. Well, right now, I'm not kidding. In any given week, we can get 1,000 questions to our Let's Talk. And that really has been something that our parents really appreciate, rather than it just going to an email and then us having to figure out who's the best person to answer that. And it sometimes can get lost if we have 1,000 emails coming into my inbox. The communication has been great both ways.
You mentioned the importance of, you know, in-class learning, but are there some courses for which you have found that online learning would be a good thing to continue, you know, in the new normal?
There are a lot of things about this new online learning that I know we're going to carry forward, and that have been really great and some game changers for some kids in particular. I shared a story earlier in the week with the chamber, the North Dallas Chamber, about Aldelia Creek Elementary, and we had a 5th grader who is autistic and had never spoken before, and said his first words while on a Zoom call with his classmates and with the teacher, and they attribute it to the fact that student maybe has not felt as comfortable in an in-person classroom, and so this new technology format was what was best for his learning. And so that's a wonderful story to hear. I have heard from some of our older students at high school that when they're in Zoom calls, they love the chat feature because they can immediately send a private question to their teacher and get it answered in, they can chat with each other and get questions answered. So I think that, some of this, we weren't ready. We were not, in terms of training for our teachers, last March when we said we're going to switch to all virtual learning. Well, I heard someone say earlier in the week that if someone would have said, how long do you think it will take? It was Dr. Benson who said at UT, who said, how long do you think it would take to train all of your teachers to be all virtual? And I know I would have answered, we would need at least a year or two to plan for that. And we did it in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then this summer, of course, we really worked to perfect that so it would be better. So I think that, the teachers' use of technology, some of them are doing tutoring sessions at night with the kids, just opening up a Zoom call and saying, I'm going to have office hours at night, and anybody who wants to get on, I'll answer all your questions. So I think those are things that we're going to take forward because this is a new way where we can give feedback to kids on their learning.
I know from my two college-age kids that some of their courses are being taught by older, teachers who have pre-existing conditions, and they're all online. There's no in-class, and so I would suppose that for some high school, or public school teachers, that might be the same case where it's just, that's the only way they're going to be able to deliver content. So, well, I was on a call for about an hour this morning with your good friend and my good friend, George Tang of Educate Texas. He says to say hello to you. And of course, we were talking about the upcoming legislative session, and boy, it's going to be a doozy. I mean, revenue shortfalls and pandemics, and not even rules around which, the chambers can convene and so forth. But I just want to, so I know that there is real concern amongst public education, in Texas about how to, ensure that the reforms in House Bill 3 stay intact or unfunded. So I assume that's going to be your top priority in RISD, right? But so talk about what your expectations and your hopes are for the next session.
Yeah, I think that the 2021 legislature, this legislative session again is going to be, hopefully, it is my hope, it has to be about education again, to the degree it was last time. And again, that was unprecedented. For all of y'all that followed the last legislative session, for education to be the top priority in House Bill 3 to be passed was, it's unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it in my entire career. But here we are again. Now we're going to be fighting to keep that funding, So that will be our priority moving forward. As well as, we have a lot of challenges across the state that we need some focus on. And even as of yesterday, I've been on calls with Larry Taylor and Dan Huberty to raise their awareness about some of the challenges that face us regarding attendance and regarding our loss of enrollment. So I'll tell everyone on the call that one of the things that school districts are seeing right now is as much as a 5% enrollment loss, every single district. And I have not, with the exception of Mesquite, I think they're a little bit lower. Everyone else is a 5% plus. For us, that's 2,000 students. For us, that equates anywhere, depending on our attendance, it could be a $20 to $30 million loss in a budget that we've adopted. And some may say, well, just cut back on your spending. Well, let me explain that to you. So 90% of our budget is in people and staff, all of salaries for our people. We gave contracts to our employees prior to COVID-19. And so everyone came to work and we're paying their salaries. And if we, because of the loss of funding, of which we couldn't have predicted, and we don't feel is the responsibility for us to make up that shortfall, we could be seeing a $20 million loss this year in our budget. Or the other thing would have to be that we would have to cut staff, and we don't want to do that. So we're asking for the state to give us some hold harmless measures. And what that means is that, for example, for attendance, if our attendance is lower, and our attendance is lower, and it's we're 5 weeks in, we need them to give us a hold harmless. Well, they've already granted that for 12 weeks. In other words, whatever attendance is for this, if it's lower than what it was at this time last year, then they'll let us use our last year's first 12 weeks to get funded for attendance, but that's not going to be long enough. And so we're asking them to extend that. And that's what Huberty and Larry Taylor are looking at right now, taking something to the governor that would help us with that. So, you know, additional funding for mental health, special education, school safety measures. These are all things that we have to keep fighting for, because especially for mental health, for the number of kids who are in isolation right now, we have needs that are greater than ever before. And so these are things that House Bill 3 we're supporting. We can't let any of that get sidelined because of any kind of state budget shortfall.
So for the kids who are not showing up that you expected to show up, what happened to them, and are they gradually re-enrolling?
So what we think happened to them, and again, it's 2,000 for us, and if it's 5% across the state, that would be 250,000 kids. And they all just didn't move out of our state. And so what that means is, and we are already knowing that a lot of pre-K kids who we had counted on, that they had given us indication they were going to enroll, kindergarten students, their parents have just opted to keep them home. And maybe that's a delay. So maybe we'll see them again next year. And of course, that is our absolute hope, that they'll just re-enroll, and next year they're holding them back. Instead of sending them pre-K, they'll send them next year for their first year of school. But what it can't be is that we have kids in second grade, first grade, and we know we have some, we know we do, whose parents just can't support them in online learning, because it takes a lot. And I know I probably have some parents on this call who are watching right now, that if you have your kids at home and they're in asynchronous learning, you know that you have to be a facilitator for that learning. Well, a lot of parents, especially those socioeconomic status, cannot do that. But they also aren't comfortable sending their kids to school face-to-face. So they're just not in school learning right now. And that's our greatest concern. And so we are literally going door to door of families that we feel should have been enrolling, that were our students last year. We have no indication that they've moved. And we're trying to, you know, take them support to get them in school. We're hoping that as we have a successful first 9 weeks or first couple of months of school, that parents will be able to see through the optics that they have, that it is safe to be in school. We are doing, and that is why we are being so strict about our protocols, because we want families to feel comfortable to send their kids back to school. And so we would much rather have them in school with us than at home not learning. But then, of course, that raises another challenge that I've put out there, that if we were to have 100% of our kids in school, we would not be able to safely social distance. And so that will be another challenge that we'll be facing as our numbers increase, because we're required to social distance. And so, again, I appreciate that you're asking these questions, because these are a lot of the daily challenges that we're grappling with trying to do this, you know, this new way of educating our kids.
Well, I think you can be pretty well guaranteed that the business community across the state is going to be highly supportive of protecting the investments that we made in public education through House Bill 3. And we absolutely, you know, are supportive of, you know, hold harmless and all the other needs that you talked about. It's just, you know, we moved the needle last session. We can't afford to move the needle back. And I was on an interesting chat with 2 Republican legislators who were asked about, you know, are you going to back off the funding from last session? They said, absolutely not. And we'll do it even if we need to dip into the rainy day fund. And it's like, you know, it took a while for me to get over the shock to hear 2 very conservative Republican legislators that I know very well both say, yeah, we're willing to dip into the rainy day fund to, you know, continue this investment. So that's good. I know that we're going to have a lot of questions, and I've got a few more, but I want to change over to another problem I know that districts and students are experiencing, and that has to do with, you know, the fidelity of learning during the pandemic, the data that shows that there was less student engagement, and that, you know, particularly in the spring, you know, when we did away with the STAR test, and, you know, there was just kind of a pass fail and so forth. I think there was a lot of concern about accountability, mastery of content, et cetera. So what are your expectations regarding student performance in terms of, accountability, and what is the state expecting of school districts in that regard?
So if you read the paper last week after Commissioner Morath was on a call with some of us, Michael Hinojosa and myself and Sarah Bonser, he made it very clear that STAR will be in place. And I'll tell you that I'm great with that. Like we need a way to measure student progress. So I am all for accountability. I think that we are funded by taxpayers, and we need to be doing the jobs to teach kids. So I am for accountability to make sure that we can see where we are. But what I'm not for is during this time of this unprecedented state that we are in, for us to be held to the A through F ratings and the standards that have been in place. And so, I am for STAR testing. I'm for accountability. I'm for measures of learning, but I'm not for it being in any way held to what was of the past measures. And so that's where we are right now in our conversations with TEA about that. We in Richardson invested this year for the very first time. We are giving MAP testing, which is measures of academic progress. And that allows us to test, and we're just about to close our testing window for all of our schools. That will provide us with data that will allow us to see where our students are for this beginning of year. We'll do it again in middle of year and then end of year. And so we'll use that to see where the learning loss is that occurred over the spring and the summer. And then we're doing a lot of things differently this year. Lots of Saturday opportunities, like I mentioned, lots of at-home tutoring sessions by teachers to try to make up that learning loss. So, but we're asking for the state to eliminate the ratings for 2020, 2021, but to provide us with the data so that we can use it to catch kids up.
Gotcha. What's been the experience of, the high school students selecting those endorsement tracks for graduation? And are you noticing anything different between this, the beginning of this school year and last school year in terms of the selections that the students are making in those 5 endorsement tracks?
Yeah, there have not been a lot of changes. And to high school, our enrollment is up actually in high school right now, and the choices that kids are making really is tracking along the same lines. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they start that track in terms of foundational courses, oftentimes their freshman year, and then they just continue to build on them as they go through for their graduation choice pathway. The thing that has been challenging for us at high school, and I know, again, if I have any parents who are on who have high schoolers, it's been a challenge with scheduling. I'll tell you, I know, and I can't, I wish that could have been done better, but that because of the fluidness of people moving back and the choices and all of that, we've had a lot of struggles with high school scheduling. I think we're about there, wherever we're getting everyone to know that we've got that right. But in terms of the course pathways, our teachers are committed to co-seating, which is really one of the hardest ways to teach. And co-seating means that they have kids that are in person while they also have kids that are virtual. And so they're working, but that is really the only way that we could do that for the courses, many of the CTE and pathway courses that you're talking about, because we sometimes only have one specialized teacher that can teach those courses. And so, but we've just been working because we couldn't cut off those pathways for kids. If that's their career choice pathway, we didn't want to cut that off. And so we're doing everything we can to meet those needs so that kids don't have to choose another track, because that's not what we wanted to have happen.
Well, as you know, and many of the people on this call know, of the 5 endorsement tracks, the STEM one is particularly important to Richardson in our area. And of course, just what an awesome grant that you got from the TI Foundation to, turn the entire Berkner feeder pattern into a STEM feeder pattern. Has that progressed through the pandemic? Are we still making those plans and investments to do that? Give us a status on that, if you would, please.
Yeah, so one of the great things that came from the TI grant for the Berkner feeder pattern was our partnership with Discovery Education. And Discovery Education is an online platform in which so many lessons are taught to where kids can go out and experience real world experiences through technology. So that was such a great thing that we had that set us up for success, as we had to have kids learning still at home. So yeah, our partnership with Texas Instruments is just as strong as ever. They have been supporting us through their board, through just calls from them to see what additional things do you need now, because they realize that there are new challenges for us, but nothing in terms of our commitment to ensure that we are providing a great STEM education for that feeder pattern, or career education and preparation for our kids, because even though we're in the time of a pandemic, they're still progressing through the grades, and we have kids that are going to graduate this year. So we have to have them as ready as we possibly can so that we can fill the workforce with RSD graduates.
Absolutely. So has the pandemic and the online learning opened up new opportunities for businesses to support the district and classrooms, or are there new volunteer opportunities now that have been made available?
So right now, unfortunately, we aren't having any volunteers going in person. So because those are following guidelines that we need to limit the number of exposures of people coming into our buildings. So in terms of in-person volunteers, I would say no. But in terms of virtual volunteer experiences, I would say yes. So because now Zoom is so great, right? This is so great. We can have so many more people connecting. Teachers have learned new ways to contact people like never before. And so it has opened up opportunities for, if a teacher is wanting to make a connection with a business professional, then they schedule a Zoom, and that business professional comes on live in terms of the board in their room and talks and answers questions. So I think that those are going to be things that are going to enhance partnerships with businesses. And so for any who are listening out there, we would love to make connections. You can go through Sarah McCoy, who's on this call, she's our executive director for CTE, and she will connect you with a classroom. So yeah, I think we're going to see more virtual volunteering than we have ever had before, because people are so now used to this type of interaction and seeing how easy it is to just jump on a call and answer some questions.
Yeah, I know that my board meeting attendance is way up because we're doing board meetings virtually. I mean, it's hard to make an excuse why you can't show up, and you don't have to get in a car and just whatever. You know that Dave Galley, who's my STEM workforce director, is working closely with RASD and has found some pretty interesting ways to support STEM education during the pandemic, including the STEM education, or the STEM question of the week, at some of your poorest or Title I schools, and giving kids a chance to do that work, and then get a grocery card if they're selected. So yeah, it's been a pretty cool effort that we're going to try to continue. So that's good. I know a lot of people want to know about just the normal things of life that you expect during school. I mean, for a lot of us, we want something that reminds us of normal. And the change in weather has been helpful. Football coming back has been helpful. I'm seeing tons of Halloween decorations around the neighborhood. But for students, talk about sports and extracurricular activities. Are those still going on? Are they still able to do the kinds of things that they would normally be able to do or not?
Yes, and we have, that's one of the things that we know is so important. If you think about high school, people obviously are learning everything, but a lot of things that make kids go to school are those extracurricular activities. They're on teams and they're friends, and that's where they make some of their strongest bonds and connections. So we were committed to doing everything we could as soon as possible to stand up those opportunities for our kids. So volleyball has started. Last night was our first varsity football game, and Lake Highlands High School beat Poteet High School, which I used to be the principal of, but I say, go Lake Highlands, go Wildcats. Tonight we have games including that we'll be playing at both of our stadiums. So we'll have band, cheer, drill team. I had a great a picture sent to me from a Highlandette mom from last night saying, thank you for letting my senior have her Highlandette costume on and to walk on the field last night. So, but per UIL, we are limited to 50% in the stands. And so there's some new things. If you want to go to a football game, you have to have a ticket in advance. There are no paper tickets. Face coverings are going to be required for attendance at all UIL events. And if you're not wearing a mask, then you can be policed to where you would have to leave, or the school can be sanctioned. So that's kind of a UIL rule. Homecoming and senior events are on schedule, but they're going to look different. We moved a lot of our senior events up to the front of the schedule so that we could ensure that they would have them in the event that games or the season had to be postponed or canceled, which certainly we're hoping that doesn't happen. So those are some of the things that we're thinking through all the time. How can we make sure that kids are having as many of those experiences? Because for many, the senior class of 2021 is only going to have one senior year. And we want to do everything that we can to make sure. So we're still going to have a homecoming court. We're still going to have moms that are going to be allowed. There'll be no RHS parade, sadly, this year through the streets. But and some of the events, obviously, we can't have. But we're coming up with new and creative ways that we can have new experiences for our kids every day. And we really want this to be a great year for all of our students in Richardson.
I remember you and I were talking in the spring, and of all the things that you were dealing with and trying to immediately transition to online learning, you got concerns about the pandemic and all that. I remember you telling me the number one question you kept getting asked, is there going to be a senior graduation ceremony? And so is there going to be a senior graduation ceremony come spring of next year?
We'll definitely have students walking across the stage in cap and gown with pomp and circumstance and with all kinds of the celebration that they deserve. I really couldn't tell you what that will look like because I can't project where we'll be in May, but I will tell you that we have, one of the things that we had to stand up and make a decision about graduation within just a couple of weeks last year. And that was a big challenge. And we did really the very best that we could to have kids have that experience with their family. Many families, it was funny about that because many families, when it was over, although it was so hot for those 2 days, and love to anyone who was out working on those 2 days straight. But a lot of parents kind of liked it, because they liked to have the experience. Some parents gave their diplomas to their own kids. They were right there. They didn't have to sit through a 2-hour ceremony. But I also know that there are people that didn't like that because they wanted the tradition of the graduation where kids walked across the stage with all of their friends. And so we are already, and here it is in, still September, but we're already thinking about graduation for May and having some different plans depending on what the social context is of the pandemic. And so, yeah, we will have a great graduation for the class of 2021. We just don't know exactly what it will look like right now.
I'm going to ask you one more question, but I want to advise the audience that this is, we're going to turn it over to you to ask questions. And remember, please put them in chat, if you will. And I think Randy Ford, I think you're going to kind of monitor that and indicate what questions. I get a good thumbs up. So my college kids, and I think this is true for a lot of college kids in Texas, the universities, one of their strategies in dealing with the fall flu season and COVID and all that is to end the fall semester by Thanksgiving. and then the kids come home when they get a really elongated break. I've heard some talk that the pandemic may cause public education in Texas to rethink the school year. What's going on with that discussion?
Yeah, and there are a lot of districts that did change their schedule. Dallas ISD hasn't gone back to face-to-face yet, and they delayed their start date by several weeks, and so they'll go later in the summer. There's some school districts that are looking about really thinking about year-round school to try to make up for the learning loss that's going to potentially show in terms of our data. So we had a calendar committee that is already working on this next year's calendar, and we're looking around at what are some great ideas, and we're hopeful that the community will understand if we do have to alter some of our calendar, that we're doing so in the best interest of trying to remediate and make up that learning loss. And so we're in the process now of evaluating that. I don't want anyone to be fearful that you may lose your summer vacation plans because this is early on in the conversation. But we're going to be working with our board and taking, some conversations for them to discuss. But we're going to wait until we see what our data reveals for this first MAP assessment and that measurement of academic progress, and then we're going to see what we need to do because really ideally we would love to be able to pivot and do whatever we need to do to make up for whatever the learning loss is, so that the 21-22 school year can be as normal as it can possibly be, if obviously this is over. And we're hearing that may not be the case. We're hearing that we may start another school year with these same circumstances and mask and with the same level of need for risk protocols. And so if there's anything that we've learned, it is how to be nimble and how to pivot to from day to day, how to accommodate the needs that are out there for 39,000 people and all of our families that are in either virtual or in person. And we're going to continue to do that with great fidelity and commitment, because that's what we're here to do as a public service to our community.
Well, as the old saying goes, never let a good crisis go to waste. And so if we can use the pandemic as a way to kind of change some anachronistic, habits in all sorts of life. I mean, not just public education, but business and otherwise, we need to do that. So, Randy, I know that you've been following the chat room, and do we have some questions that the audience wants to ask Dr. Stone?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Stone, for doing this. I think you've already addressed the first question, which had to do with athletics. So I think you've handled that appropriately. Next question is, what is the target classroom size for face-to-face and virtual learning environments in the elementary school setting?
Yeah, so and again, this is a challenge as our numbers continue to grow in elementary. We're held to not go over 22 to 1. We're trying to keep that as best that we can. The face shields are one of the desk shields are one of the reasons why, because we're trying to social distance, but because of the numbers and because of the spaces and sizes of our classrooms, they are that's one of the challenges. It's just how do we social distance? And so teachers are getting creative with that. We're trying to keep our numbers as low as we can, but that's just a balancing act of trying to make sure that we have, and for some of our virtual classes, to be honest, those have had to be higher in terms of enrollment, because we've had to ask, or we're going to be submitting some waivers to the state because of that. We have to submit a waiver if we were over 22 to 1 in our younger classrooms. And so we are having to do that because we have to have smaller face-to-face classrooms as best that we can. So the balancing of all of that, and Tabitha Branham is our deputy superintendent. I know she's on the call and she heads up that work, and it really is looking at the numbers by school, by classroom, and trying to balance those out. We're trying to make sure that kids can stay with their teachers as they change from class to class. There's just so many things that are challenging about that. And Tabitha is on the call. I see she still has a lot of hair, but at any given day, she's pulling it out, trying to accommodate and make this the best that we possibly can.
Okay, thank you. Another question about symptoms. When a child has symptoms, I think you alluded a little bit to this earlier, but just, the protocols, how quick and reliable is the testing, the notification? Address that a little bit further.
Yeah, so, and again, this is something we're definitely partnering with not only our parents, but providing resources and referrals to where parents can go to get testing, working with agencies where parents can go to get either low cost or free testing. If a student has been if they have been determined to be in close prolonged contact, again, they have to quarantine for 14 days. And if they can only come back to school, if they come back to school with a negative test. So, those are things that notification. We have a great health service department. Our nurses are another group of people that I would encourage you to love on, because they are constantly responding to not only questions, but also the needs of families who are concerned about whether or not that their children have symptoms. And so the notification happens. It happens immediately if someone has been either exposed to someone who has tested positive. And then we send out letters and notifications twice a week. We update our portal daily, but then we notify parents of any school that has had any positive cases twice daily. And again, I keep stressing every meeting, trust and transparency. And this comes, early on, and I'll just tell you, early on, I had heard or read some sad things on Facebook about how the schools were going to hide this. And that just blew my mind a little bit. Like, how would even anybody think that we would hide information that is of this serious of a nature? So I want to say, if you've ever read anything like that on social media, and I could say a lot about social media right now and about how disheartening that can be sometimes for people to spend their time there in a negative sense. But we would never hide anything from parents about the health and safety and well-being of their child or of any school. And so trust and transparency are two big words for us. And so that comes from notification of parents on a daily basis if there is any risk at all. And we invite parents to call us if they have questions or concerns.
Okay, thank you. And Tabitha has also posted, thank you, Tabitha, that in the Blueprint FAQ, there's a lot more resources and direction regarding that too. Next question has to do with mental health. What kind of resources are we providing for students with mental health issues today? And, I assume looking forward to.
Yeah, and again, another group that I would give a shout out to would be our counselors. Our counselors are working around the clock. And when I say around the clock, that would be taking calls, answering calls. Everyone knows that we are pretty much on 24/7 in terms of there are needs that are identified. And there are needs that are identified every day, every night, every weekend. And so we have resource hotlines that are set up. We have set up care teams that are from the central office that are made up of a counselor and other central office resource folks from our student services. They're assigned to each one of our campuses to meet the needs. There are, and then we're also, resourcing other agencies, making lots of referrals. We have a lot of needs that are real right now for families and employees as well. This, again, I don't think I've said it on this call yet, the stress level for teachers is higher than it's ever been. I'm seriously concerned about our employees and their stress levels, constantly reminding them to take care of themselves. So, you know, the biggest thing that we are stressing is that there is a lot of support. There is a lot, and anyone only needs to reach out and we will cover you up with support with a care team or a Zoom call or referring to you know, any kind of resource that's needed right now. But mental health is a huge concern, and I think that that's going to raise to a higher level than it ever was before. And that has to be on the radar of our legislators. It has to be on the radar of anyone who's in the decision making to provide resources. TEA has provided a lot of additional resources as well that we're pushing out to our campuses. And so, yeah, if we thought mental health were issues before, they're going to be great moving forward. And so it's up for all of us to respond.
Good, thank you. Our time's about to run out. One final question. There are quite a number of staff for both state and federal legislators on the call here. I think you've addressed from a state standpoint the importance of defending HB3 and no cuts in that. From a federal standpoint, to the extent that we'll ever have a 4.0, another package of relief, what would be your one or two wish list items that could help you in another federal package?
Yeah, so, you know, there's been a lot of money that has come our way in terms of CARES dollars. And I also want to give a huge shout out to the city of Richardson. They were one of the only city entities, I haven't heard of a whole lot of them, that put in $85,000 matching to help us with our project connectivity. But there's a lot more that can be done at the state and the federal level. I think as I have watched and observed over the last 6 months, I've never heard schools be talked about as much as they have been talked about, in particular the federal level, which is great because public schools are everywhere and should be supported wholeheartedly from both the state, and we've gotten great support from our state like never before, but need to be supported at the federal level. And there needs to be money flowing from the federal level to the state because it flows through the state. But there has to be an awareness by our Secretary of Education and everyone at the federal level that we must support public education. And so too many times we hear too many things about private education and vouchers and those kinds of things. Right now, public education should be the priority of this country. And so I would say I would love everyone at the federal level to hear that.
Okay. Right. Well, thank you. Well, we've come to the end of our time, Dr. Stone. Thank you for your leadership, and a big part of that's been your communication. And your team and all of us on this Zoom call are affected in one way or another as parents, as employers, by the Richardson School District, and of course Plano and others around. So thank you. Not that it's been a competition, but you know, we all have personal stories too. And mine is, I have 3 teachers in the family, 2 daughters and a son-in-law, one of which is in Richardson schools, and the other 2 are in unnamed districts in Dallas. And I paid close attention to the communication and how they all reacted. And I crown you as number 1 in the communication. So thank you for that. I know as business leaders and employers in Richardson, we appreciate the partnership and just appreciate how all this has been handled. So on behalf of the Education and Workforce Committee and the Public Policy Committee, thank you to all of you who have joined today. We got a great crowd, great questions and exchange here. And the staff at the Chamber is doing a great job of continuing great programming. So look forward to your continued email inbox for other programs and other ways that we're connecting with the community. And thank you for all of the elected officials, staff being on the call also, because it's important for you to hear this also on the front lines. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your
Thanks, Jeannie. Great job.
Great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. And remember, superintendents need to take care of themselves too.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate you. I appreciate everyone on this call. It's a great partnership with y'all. I feel all the support. We do. And I extend that to all the district. Thank you. Y'all be safe and well.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
Thank you, you too.